Yo, yo, my sovereigns, what up? This is Boba Fett, uncensored on the internet, with episode 119 of Splinterlands 101, and a very different episode for 119. And if you don't know it yet, you will by the end of this episode, that 119 does have some significant energetic properties. And it was when we were discussing on the server, because Flauwy's been on the show before, I'm sure if you've watched it, you would remember him be dazzling us with his spreadsheet knowledge and information on the land expansion. So he's part of our server. Once you're a guest on the server, you're a guest in the server. And we just posted that 119 coming up, and Flauwy just dropped some interesting bullet point sort of points about 119, and it was like, wow, why don't you come on for this episode? Let's hear about it. And interesting, with that sort of scale of discussion, this is the first time in history that both Matt and Gio have not turned up for an episode. So I said to Flo, why don't we just continue with this theme of 119? Let's just dive right down the rabbit hole, because we've had private conversations before, and we're on the same wavelength and a lot of things. And that is the whole theme of behind the avatar. When you're playing the game and and you see up on the screen a little icon or something that says Flauwy, like you go, oh, Flauwy. Because admit it, a lot of people, both not just Splinterlands but the blockchain in particular, know this name. Especially back in the heydays of Steam, with the Wattup project was getting up and running. He was very, very influential in a lot of the large communities at the time promoting. So there's a lot of people, they see the name, they go, oh, Flauwy. But what does it mean? If you could go Matrix style, go for all the digits and finally find yourself at his computer and have a look, who is sitting on that chair behind the keyboard that is penetrating your reality, your universe, as Flauwy? Who is that person? That was the whole idea behind the avatar theme on our episodes. And as I mentioned before, we had you on 3 times in a row, another first. Specific because land expansion was hot. People had questions. There was a lot of confusion, and you just nailed it with your spreadsheets and breaking it down to logical steps. But that's one part of you. So for those, when the name pops up Flauwy and it's like, Flauwy, yeah, that's the Flauwy you know. But who's the Flauwy you don't know? So let's pick it up. Welcome, Flauwy.
Hi, I'm
I think
Flauwy.
that's the
I'm not
longest
censored on the
introduction I've done,
internet,
I think.
at least not yet. I might be after this episode.
I think that's the longest introduction I've ever done for someone. But just put it into perspective of where we're just going to free fall down the rabbit hole, starting with 119. So, yeah,
It's perfect. It's a good
exactly.
number. Yeah. As a German, I learned to appreciate this number as the day of fate, as it's called, the German Schicksalstag. Because November 9, 11/9 is everywhere in the world except for the United States. November 9 is 9/11, basically, right? And November 9 is a fateful day in German history. And yeah, that's what I posted the other day in your Discord. Actually, I'm having it here in front of me, so I will just basically read from the list I created. But there's actually a Wikipedia page about that, where you can read about all these events. And it's called the German Day of Fate. And it starts with the execution of Robert Blum, who was an influential person in the German Revolution. And most people don't know much about the German Revolution. Yeah, there was an 1848, I think, and it ended basically on November 11 with his execution by the Austrians, and the German states tried to reunite or to unite them for the first time, because before then they were all separate separate states in Germany, and they tried to fight against the militarism of Prussia, which invaded Poland by that time. So they were really democratic, and this entire movement was shut down. And yeah, the whole thing ended with this execution thing. And the next thing was the Kaiser Wilhelm II, who abdicated in 1918 after the First World War. And then 2 years later, 1921, Einstein received his Nobel Prize. He moved out of Germany, but he originally came from Germany, and by that time he was still resident, I think, in Germany. And then again, 2 years later, 1923, there was the beer hall putsch, which was 10 years before Nazi Party took power in Germany, and Hitler went into prison and wrote his infamous book then in prison, and then after the Nazis took over in 1938, there were the November pogroms, which were attacks all over the country against Jewish shop owners, and has also the infamous title in German. Actually, it's not supposed to use that name anymore, because it's kind of like glorifying the events, called Reichskristallnacht, the Crystal Night, because they were throwing rocks into the shop owners' windows all over the country. And then most famous one for the younger people was the fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989, ending the Cold War, basically. And I was there, 9 years old, experiencing the wall opening up after years of living in an occupied city in the American sector. So that was pretty intense. Yeah, that's November 11 for you.
Yeah,
And yeah,
because
there are many more 11/9s and 9/11s. I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, actually.
so, and interesting in numerology, like 9 has an energy all of its own. And some styles like Kabbalistic, Chaldean numerology, they don't even have a 9 when they're calculating numbers, simply because any number added to 9 is that number. So to avoid the simplification with 9s in their matrix, their numerology system does not have a 9. And then, of course, 11, which is the double one. 11 and 22 have significance in numerology as well, where everything is reduced to a single digit except 11. 11 never becomes 2, it's always 11. So we're dealing with two really individually strong numbers, 9 and 11, each having their powers of their own. So what happens when we put them together, whether it's 11/9 or 9/11, because like I said, 9/11, September 11, only in the USA. Everywhere else in the world, 9/11 is actually the 9th of November. And if you reverse
Right.
that, then it simply, so for example, on our 9/11, which is the 9th of November, like energetically, like that would be an insignificant number in the United States. Whereas even though we do say 11/9 rather than 9/11, everyone still knows 9/11. So that the 9/11 has infiltrated the 11/9 mindset, but the 11/9 has not entered into the 9/11 mindset in the USA. So what, do you see something in that, like giving one
Oh,
number?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so much to just what you said. We can just make the entire show just about that, what you just said in the last few minutes. So 11/9, yeah, you have 9 is the last number, the last digit of the decimal system before the 10, where it becomes basically 2 digits. Yeah, and then 10 being this godly number. And then 11 is the number after the godly number, which is one higher. It's one above God,
Which
basically.
could you then say one above the demiurge, which means God is actually the demiurge, and then 11 is the creator. Because I think
Yes, I guess you could say that if you want. And then 11 of course is this super number, is this esoteric symbolism of the entrance to the Temple of Jerusalem. It's Boaz and Jachin, the two columns that stand at the entrance of the Holy of Holy, where the Ark of the Covenant is being placed with the 10 Commandments of God written on the two stone um,
tablets.
tablets, exactly, received through Moses. And yeah, it becomes very, very magical with the 11. And 11 is I mean, even if you don't understand much about numbers, you know, like this 11:11 phenomenon, you look at the clock and it's 11:11 or something like that, and there are tons of websites talking about this. Oh yeah, this magical number 11:11. But there's so much to it. I mean, for example, I was at the solar eclipse August 11 at 11:11, which was visible in the UK, just at the tip of the UK, at the 101 stone formation, the Menam Toll stone formation, yeah, fitting for the 101
101, yeah.
show. And I was at the 101 episode, right? Um, and then there was the and the Mayans predicted that solar eclipse and said, with that solar eclipse there will be a dark transformation in society, starting or preparing for the fifth Mayan world, which starts with the long count and short count clocking together on December 21st, 2012. 13 years later at 11:11 again. Um, and yeah, and the system is fighting against this transformation of consciousness rising. And it will take two cartoons. One cartoon is 20 years of the new fifth Mayan world, of this transformational time where old systems fighting against the new system, and it's actually a little bit darker times rather than lighter times, even though consciousness is rising constantly, and it has doing so for the last 12 years now. Yeah, and then yeah, so that's the 11:11 with time, but it creates the first master number, and then you have the 22, which is the second master number, the master builder number, and the 33 is the third and final master number, which is also the 33 degrees of Freemasonry. You have the 33 vertebrae in the spine, creating this Kundalini energy rising up your vertebrae, your axis mundi, your tree of life,
Sasara.
ending in your brain, ending in your third eye, ending in the pineal gland, creating DMT during your dreams, and especially during your birth and during your death. Incarnation into your body, excarnation of your body. The Egyptians called this the white, the silver gate of Isis, for the incarnation point of the soul coming into the body, and the excarnation point is going, the soul is exiting through the golden gate of Osiris. And they pinpointed these points in the sky exactly at in between the signs of Sagittarius and Scorpio for the Golden Gate, and then 180 degrees on the other side of the ecliptic for the Silver Gate. over the Silver Gate being over the tip of the club or the torch of Orion, and yeah, and the Golden Gate in front of the arrow of Sagittarius and over the tip of the tail of Scorpio and under the foot of Ophiuchus the snake bearer, who's on top of it, having one foot over the Golden Gate, where the Milky Way goes by, and there's the densest part of the Milky Way, which is the head of the snake, yeah, which circles around the world tree in Norse mythology, in Mayan mythology, in Inca mythology, and so many others, where you have the tree in the center, the flat earth in the middle, and then the Ouroboros winding around it, the snail biting its own tail, and you have it in the Milky Way. The Milky Way is the Ouroboros, basically, with the densest part looking like the head of the of the snail biting in its own tail, where it looks a little bit like this.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we know today is the central black hole of the Milky Way, where we are all circling around. That's exactly where the Egyptians pointed down the Golden Gate.
Mm-hmm.
And then with numbers, and you can then see so many things connecting to that, to Golden Gate Bridge, Golden Gate movement of the black hole. When exactly is the date when it shifts into a new degree on the ecliptic, which only happens every 72 years due to the precession of the equinox, which is part of this grand year of the Mayans, which they calculated in the Inca calendar, where
2,600
the
years.
26,000 years,
Yeah.
and then you divide that by the 365, by the 360 degrees of the ecliptic, then you have the more or less 72 years
For 1
for the
degree.
shifting for 1
Yeah.
degree, where the sun is rising at the solstice equinox points, always at the same point, but then after 72 years, it's 1 degree shifted,
Mm-hmm.
and then so on and so forth. And you can use open source astronomy software to find exactly the
Push the clock back.
Sagittarius B point for the black hole, and then you see exactly at which date it moves into a new degree. And when you find this date, then you can calculate backwards and forwards to find interesting connections in time for historical events. Like, well, first of all, the last time it happens was December 11th, 2010, 12/11/10, which was exactly 11 months on the day before 11/11/11.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating if you think about it. And it was exactly 111 months after 9/11, after September 11, 2001.
And even
111 months.
number
Like
72, with like, look at the years for the degree of movement into precession. 72, which by the way is a 9, but 72 in itself has a lot of significance in our matrix, in the construct, the simulation, whatever you want to see. 72 is an important number, even down to the chakras. You mentioned the 7 main chakras, then you got the 72 nadis, and then there's a network of 144,000, even lesser, which these are all precessional numbers as well. So just the number
yes, you
72
see them in
by
nature a lot.
itself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole topic about these numbers. I mean, numbers are everywhere. Everything is numbers. Our names are numbers, words are numbers, because you can translate A into 1, like AA11, American Airlines 11 crushing into the first tower of the Grand 11, which came down that day, right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time are numbers, and then electromagnetic wavelengths are numbers. So basically you can deconstruct our entire physical reality into numbers. So
Yeah.
theoretically you can see numbers everywhere, and you can see connections everywhere, and there's meaning everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So if you go into these things, you will forever find connections forever.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you could always argue it's all nonsensical because it means nothing, and you could always argue it's the most important relevance that you could ever find, and it's endlessly interesting.
And it's
So
like
yeah, it's
in a code, like if you were designing a virtual reality of some kind, then simply by the personality of the code, of the dev writing the code, within that code, there's going to be patterns. There's going to be a signature of the dev in those patterns. And the simple fact that the most basic common denominator we have across language difficulties is numbers, which is why with SETI and so forth, they have a lot of numerical significance for the understanding of math. Um, Reducing it to the simplest form as numbers, it should make sense that looking for numbers should be a way to actually look for the code.
yes. You mentioned death. I find it very significant how numbers, especially time numbers, if you connect events in time, how they connect with death, especially of historical figures, and how they have all of a sudden then a meaningful number connection in time. Like we're talking about the 119, right? Um, when when President Obama became president, it took exactly 119 weeks on the day to the assassination of Osama bin Laden, who was the instigator of the Grand 11 coming down, right? And then President Obama shook the hand um, of Libya's President Gaddafi, who dared to create an African dollar-backed system, trying to circumvent the US dollar for oil trades and so on. And he died 119 weeks after shaking Obama's hand. And then you have stuff like the Second World War, which started exactly on the day, 22 weeks after the previous Golden Gate movement. Um, and 119 weeks later, after the start of the Second World War, on the day, the United States declared war on Germany, and Germany vice versa, war on the United States. That's another 119 there for you.
Yeah.
Or
And
we
this,
have Abraham Lincoln. He was born 11911 days after the founding of the United States. That's in 9/11 forward and backwards. And then by the way, that brings us back to your original question of seeing the connection of 11/9, 9/11. This backwards thing seems to be quite interesting for people who believe in number magic, who believe in actual like magic. And what is magic? So most people have an understanding of, yeah, magic is this thing where you have like this wand and then they come like Harry Potter sparks out of it. But it's more like, esoterically speaking, mind over matter. You have an intention, and with your intention, you shift reality. And we all do that constantly, all the time, whether we want it or not. If we don't think about it, we do it subconsciously.
hmm,
And we all co-create this reality. And then some people who believe in these kinds of things believe in magic rituals, using numbers, using stars and constellations and these kinds of things, as well as things like doing things backwards, like Aleister
yeah,
Crowley being a big proponent of backwards reading, backwards actions, and then inspiring the Beatles to do like backwards music. There's another Wikipedia page just about that, about backwards stuff and how the Beatles used that for some of their magic, for some of the music. I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, even that, the whole, this going back Gnostic again, that the world of the demiurge is an inversion of the original, because the demiurge and the archons, the ruling bodies, they cannot create, but they can alter. So if you give them a blank piece of paper, they can't draw anything. But if you give them a drawing, they can make it look like something else. All right. So that's sort of energy. But if we are in a mirror version of something else, or this reality that the demiurge has created is an inversion of what should be, then you've got, again, the number 11, which if you look at it in its binary form of ones and zeros, it's the same. So again, like the 11 is the creator, whereas a 10 becomes a 1 and a 1 becomes a 10. So numbers in themselves within an inversion, if you're recognizing that we're living in an inversion, then it's, I guess, there's certain ways to shift your mind from the programmed reality of the matrix by deliberately doing something backwards. Maybe you would recognize something or get in tune with something of the inversion of what we're experiencing as the construct of our reality.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's lots being said about things that are happening in our external world, which feel like an inversion of everything. Just do the opposite. Just put it upside down, inside out, turn it around, make it like make it something that couldn't be further from the truth. Sometimes it feels like our entire reality is constructed like that.
I mean, you look at the bastions of the matrix, things like that, the health industry, its sole purpose is to keep you sick. The finance industry, its purpose is to keep you broke. The education system is there to make sure you don't advance. And even when it comes down to government, what people think the government is, in reality, it's a complete inversion. And it runs itself in the way that of the inversion. Like, it's obvious to everyone, I think, oh, the system's broken, it doesn't work. It's like, no, the system's working perfectly. You just don't understand what it's supposed to be doing. So that whole inversion thing, I think, is when it reaches the point where, you know, you can listen to someone when they go a little far, but if suddenly they're talking about a 180 reality, like, it's just an instant switch off. No one's listening anymore. So yeah, I think we sort of like a bit of a rock in between them. But at some point, and maybe, you know, the sky falling, maybe that's what it is. It's the inversion and the actual one joining together as one reality. But yeah, I definitely feel that we're in an inversion of what is actually real.
Yeah. Yeah, coming back to this whole Golden Gate thing and the movement and the shifting of the sky, the great year, the 26,000 years. If you zoom out and look at our movement of the Earth following the sun, and the sun doing its own movement through the galaxy, then you see that we are doing this sinus wave going in and out of our Milky Way arm, at least going further away from denser matter, and then inside, outside, inside, outside. This is 26,000 years is one sinus wave, basically. One
Sine
up,
wave.
sine wave, sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
going up, going down. And then you have 13,000 years for half a cycle. And you have 5,000 years to go from the center to the furthest point apart from the center of the arm, basically. And if you now think about that in terms of consciousness, this is potentially somehow affecting how human consciousness is yeah um, is dealing with reality, how much consciousness is rising and being lowered and rising and lowered, going up and down, up and down. It's like breathing in, breathing out. And then when you connect it to stuff like 13,000 years ago, there were supposedly cataclysmic events and these kinds of things, which happen in cyclical patterns. It becomes really, really interesting how humanity is moving through time. If we believe science, then Homo sapiens sapiens is 200,000 to 300,000 years old.
Not
That
even.
basically, go ahead.
As we are modern anatomical Homo sapiens sapien, best call 18 to 120,000 years.
Right.
Prior to that, there were like Cro-Magnons, Neanderthals, which some people want to classify in the Homo genus now, as well as Homo neanderthalensis. But as we are what we refer to as anatomically modern Homo sapiens sapien, somewhere between 80,000 to 120,000 years ago is when they first appear in the archaeological record. So it's not that long.
Right. But it would still mean that we have seen a couple of cycles.
Oh yeah, as a
So
species, yeah.
so that there were actually people who were as intelligent as we are. They didn't have all the knowledge that we have now, potentially, right? Because culture and everything just had to develop, and also with it, yeah, knowledge, science, everything that comes with it, and so it can be taught to the children. So they didn't have that, but they were as smart as we are, and they were seeing the movement of the sky. They were calculating it. They had more knowledge about it than we have. They have a much better understanding to navigate with the stars and to calculate exactly when they have to put up a building, so that this one little hole in the building points exactly at the position where the sun comes up on solstice day and these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
always at the same point, except that the sky behind it shifts all the
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
But the sun is always at the same point on this day in the year. And they understood this and they calculated that and potentially had higher consciousness, whatever that means. Maybe that they were further developed than we are at some point, even though they had less technology than we have today.
That's an
It's a
assumption
very
too.
weird, that's a very weird idea, isn't it?
I don't exactly, I'm not confident at the moment in the single linear line of progression from banging rocks together to striped toothpaste. I think that there's not, I think in this given period of time, our cycles could be very, very short indeed. In fact, when you look at how long it takes just to reprogram people, it's just only 3 generations. That's all it takes. And by the 3rd generation, if you wanted to change history completely, there's no one around anymore who actually remembers the original version. But you do it incrementally, and this has happened an awful lot with history. And there's an episode from Stargate that just, when I watched it, it was like blew my mind, because this is what I was thinking myself at the time, of how they encountered this agrarian-based society, and they were being helped by a more advanced, more technologically advanced species. And it turns out in the end that basically they wiped out the original inhabitants with a virus and brought them technologically back to the Stone Age. And as this happened, like generationally, but the grandchildren of the people who were there when this other species took over, they're not around anymore. That's the 3rd generation. And I remember back in the late second half of the 90s, where you go, you know, cinemas, the the chair arm had an ashtray, aeroplanes, they all had ashtrays in your seats. You walk into an office building, the secretary's there to greet you, and there's this massive big glass ashtray on the table, and she's sucking away on a cigarette, typing on a typewriter or a keyboard. Incrementally, like within 3 generations, history can be completely rewritten. That's all it takes, 3 generations. So if our cycles were much shorter than we even contemplated cataclysmically, or whatever form of reset, a natural one or an orchestrated one, what if our progression at the moment, our lineage of history was only 500 years? How would you know? There's no way. It was like the philosophical argument. Can you prove that you existed before you woke up this morning? Like all of your memories, everything you have, you were activated with that. These memories, and no, this is just something that's playing out now, because Matt and I are both programmed into your memories. But when you achieved consciousness this morning, as you woke up from sleep, yeah, how do you prove that you existed before that point? And you can use that same argument with history as well.
Hey, Matt.
How are you, Matt?
Hello, Flauwy. Must have got the timing wrong. Sorry about that. I've woken up with a headache because somebody was drinking last night. I can't prove it was me.
Yeah, we've got less than 3 minutes of this one left anyway, and then we'll be having the Zoom break, and we'll have the second half of the show. Yeah.
Good.
So
Yeah, you missed all the parts about golden gates and 11s and 22s and.
Yeah, I've been enjoying your stuff in Discord, and look, I've never had much time for all of that in the past, but the stranger the world gets, the more open I am to learning about all this stuff, and yeah, I'm very much open to hearing everything. I like hearing stuff, right? So I'll watch the show when it's a rare treat, right? When I miss the show, and then I can watch it back afterwards and get to be a viewer.
Yeah. So we're just talking about things like, I guess you'd be familiar with the 11:11 thing. Like you just look at the clock, oh, it's 11:11, that type of thing. But just recognizing when you look deeper into things that there are patterns. Like nothing is completely random. And us playing Splinterlands, people know that RNG is like, just because there's a 70% chance something's going to happen, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But then you start seeing like someone, I remember a couple of years ago, I don't know if the algorithms changed or not, but they broke down like the RNG using data retrieved from the blockchain. So, and it was like very, very like distinctive patterns running through what was supposed to be RNG. And I guess if we're creating this reality, yeah, it might be a wider scope, but there should still be patterns from the original dev that created the construct based on their bias of thinking. All right, so yeah, Matt, we were like with powers of numbers and things like that, we're talking like now what shapes reality. And we talk about the changing times, the world is changing, but is the world actually changing, or is it just our perception of the world that's changing? And if so, if our perception of the world is changing, are we changing the world with our perception? And how much of our time do we spend unaware of this and just being programmed or brainwashed through TV, media, propaganda, so that you're just automatically thinking? If you're not conscious of what you're thinking, usually your thinking will deteriorate to a point that's mainstream matrix, and so you're co-creating the existence that a few people want by controlling what you think. So if we spent more time actually focusing our perception on what we want to see rather than what we see. And you mentioned when you came on how before you never had that much time for this kind of thing and so forth. But in recent years, you've seen so much change that you're now open to a lot of possibilities. So have you seen a lot of things change, or have you changed so you're now seeing a lot of things? And what are some examples? Like how has your perception of the world changed just since what you were taught in primary school and high school? When you were taught this is the world, what have you noticed to be different?
Yeah, I remember asking about money and why they didn't print more money, and being told that we were on the gold standard sometime in the mid-late 80s, which was completely wrong. I mean, we'd been off the gold standard for a while by then, but I at the time just heard that as a explanation and just accepted that economists knew what they were talking about, and then lived my life for 30 or so years. Right up until somebody asked me, what school of economics thought I subscribed to, and I thought economics was like economics to me before then was like calculus. I just figured the guys who are the experts in it know how it all works, right? I just go about living my life. I had no idea that there were different schools of thought as far as economics go. But it's like if somebody said, "Oh, by the way, calculus, the guys over here that completely disagree, and they've got an entirely different version of calculus." You'd go, well, hang on, I thought it was all settled. So literally, I had no idea about that, and I can pinpoint the exact moment when I put my hand up in class and said, "Why don't we just print more money?" And the teacher said, "Because the government's limited by how much gold they hold." And that to me just buried the whole thing. And so I can go back to that moment where I lost all my curiosity about economics. And it continued to not make sense to me for such a long time. So as I'm thinking more about stuff and learning more about stuff, I'm starting to understand, especially with the COVID just farce, how much people are willing to lie, how much people in power are willing to lie to stay in power, and big, bold-faced lies. Things like faking the moon landing. I always thought that's just ridiculous. How many people would need to be lying? And then with the COVID stuff, I'm seeing all these people lying, and I'm thinking, okay, so they will actually band together and just get on camera and just lie to my face.
Safe and effective.
So maybe they did fake the moon landing, and I've become far less enthusiastic in believing things that I haven't experienced personally, and that's across the board. So your mud flood, Tartaria stuff. Yeah, maybe. I'm completely open to hearing all sorts of arguments. Whereas previously I would have said, take your conspiracy rubbish elsewhere. Now I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll hear your theory. I'll see your evidence. I'm very open to hearing all of that. So I would say I've not landed on firmly saying, okay, there was definitely a mud flood, or saying we definitely faked the moon landing, or in a way, I haven't switched from one belief to another belief. I've just lost a whole lot of the beliefs that I held about the past, and now I'm in a headspace where I really prefer to spend my time thinking about things that I can deduce myself, not and things that I can personally experience myself. So if you say to me, "Hey, here's this new engine design, that a car that runs on water," well, then that's interesting to me because I can experience that. You can lift the bonnet and show me. But if you say 300 years ago this thing happened, and I don't, that's less interesting to me simply because I can't experience it myself personally. So it's just another one of the things that could very well be true. Yeah. So even with, like, going back to economics, there's a video series called Praxgirl, Praxgirl, and she just runs you through a series of like 25 lessons on Austrian economics, praxeology. It's essentially a science it's a non-experimental science. So it has laws, it has all sorts of, it's very, very dense. I didn't realize how dense it was, but there's so much there about the laws of human action and studying the human action. But it's something that is, you can deduce it to be true as you're hearing it. You go, yes, that is true, that is true, that is true. You don't have to believe anything. There's no belief required. It's just self-explanatory, self-obvious. And that to me is so much more appealing than having to believe somebody else, because other people don't have credibility. It's stuff I can experience myself or deduce myself, arguments I can follow myself. Otherwise, it's just, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Sure,
Yeah.
whatever. I'll hear it, but I really don't believe that much stuff anymore.
Well, you hit on a key point there. I mean, I've been like, before the internet, when there was things like Nexus magazine in Australia. So for more than 30 years of my life, I've loved researching at the availability level to me. So, back, magazines, the library, Encyclopedia Britannica and hardback, so very limited sources, until a point arose where, you started getting like magic shops, new age shops, and so additional sources for information. But initially just looking into something like an alternative history, an alternative theory, or conspiracy theory, just simply by looking into it, it's not a case of, okay, I've changed. I've woken up. I now see the light. I realize I was taught bullshit. This is the truth. Rather than that, it's like the new theory. Is this true? Is this real? I don't know. But what I do know is this is bullshit. What I was told, what I was taught. So is the new theory a replacement theory? Is it true? Is it real? I have no idea. But I do know that the system that I was taught in school is bullshit. So, because it gets you to look at what you have accepted as an axiom. And you mentioned a point with economics at school with the gold standard. It's like at that age, you go to school. I don't know what it's like nowadays. Like the latest generation does seem to be a lot more questioning. But when I was at school, like primary school, high school, you went there, you sat down, and from instructions from my parents, like what I should, head down and study and listen hard. Anything that the teacher told me, I didn't take that in as, I need to check this out, I need to research this. I just accepted it as fact. And then what happens is 20, 30 years in your life, when you need to make an analytical assessment or decision, that's part of the code, but you don't know that it's there. So if somewhere in the code it's got, 2 + 5 = 6, you don't know that that's there for it to be wrong. It's just part of the equation, and then you make a decision, garbage in, garbage out. So it's a case of going back and questioning intensely everything you've accepted as true or as a fact from school. Now that you're able to, go and do some research. Does it stand up? And the best way to do that is to look at conspiracy theories or alternative theories, because you're being offered an alternative, and there's people who'll give you some specific things to look at. And then you can look at them and you go, okay, well, if what I was told is true, this can't be right, this can't be right. And then when you've got 12 this can't be rights to you what I was taught, then you go, okay, well, maybe what I'm observing, what I'm seeing is real, what I was taught was wrong.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you look at conspiracies, they're basically showing you a bunch of things that are different from the main narrative, and then they often draw conclusions, and this is because of this and that, and then they throw in stuff that is even harder to prove, making them ridiculous in some ways. But at the same time, while you're on this path reading about that, researching about it, you realize, wait a second, okay, maybe this is completely utter bullshit that I'm reading, but I've read these 12 points, and they are true, and you can actually fact check them. That's even on Wikipedia. I'm not saying Wikipedia is right, just that's our narrative, right? This is like our construct, our frame of reality. This has to be true because it comes from so many different sources, and it's basically our new encyclopedia, right? This is Wikipedia replaces the large book collection that you used to buy for $1,000 back in the days. And it's in there, but you're not being taught that it's in there, even though it's in there. So it really shifts your perspective on things. And then when you point that out, then all of a sudden you don't make yourself more popular in your own friend circles and family circles, because then just by pointing at facts, not even saying that, okay, this conspiracy is true or whatever, I believe in this and that. No, but just, have you seen this? Oh no, go away with that piece of information, because that kind of questions my narrative of the world. And that's threatening to me, because then when you do that, if you just point out this one little tiny thing here and I accept that, then it creates a cataclysm of things I have to question about my reality. If this is not true or true, then I have to question the next thing and the next thing. And by subconsciously realizing that, many people just push a lot of that away from them, because they don't want to be confronted with that. They don't want to have their reality being deconstructed by themselves, by realizing, by accepting this one little piece of information, which is not a conspiracy. It's out there. It's fact. It's fact, right? It's the fact that is being presented to us, but it's not part of the main narrative.
Yeah, it is funny with people like that. The people who are completely closed off to that, I tend to find they don't understand the concept of holding and examining an idea without embracing it, right? And so without taking it as part of yourself. And so they'll say, "Oh, you're the guy who believes those conspiracy theories," and because to them they think that I've gone from this belief that they share to a different belief that they don't share. Whereas it's not that. I've just lost confidence in the original belief, and now this so far maybe seems like the best possible, but I'm not actually holding it to myself. I haven't embraced it as part of who I am. But to their mind, that's the only way. You need to believe this or you need to believe that. And so to their brain, they go, you're the guy who believes that they faked the moon landing or whatever else. Because to them, that's the only you believe something and that's what you believe and that's it, right? They can't even comprehend the idea of having 3 or 4 different possibilities and assessing them all at the same time and not necessarily knowing which one's which and being okay with that ambiguity. For them, that doesn't. It's just not something they can do, and they don't believe anyone else can either.
And even with them, like some of them can only go so far. Like people I know from Melbourne, I know people who are 100% convinced that the moon landing was fake. But then you show them some video clips or some footage of the ISS space station, where they're whizzing past on wires on their back, or snippets taken from inside, and you can see they're actually on a green screen, and someone's like got that out, but can't accept it. That's the now gonna go away. So yes, the moon landing was fake, but the ISS is fake. No. Like, so there's also that limit to how far people can even go in one direction.
But you can also flip that around. Now you have the person who believes in this new narrative, and everything you present to them that challenges their new belief is immediately being pushed away, because then that's reality threatening to this new reality they have accepted. Even if you have a person who believes in flat Earth and then does its own research and does like real good scientific work to, I don't know, do whatever they have to do to prove something, and then they prove themselves wrong. They cannot even accept their own research they have done. I'm not going into the discussion whether this or that direction is right, but as soon as you accept something as your new reality, it becomes really difficult to look around that and challenge your own new belief system, because we don't know what reality is. We don't know what's going on, and there is no black and white here. And behind this perception is another perception, and behind this like 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 gatekeepers, for example, you have someone telling you about an interesting thing, but that person also is just the gatekeeper. He's telling you stuff and brings you to a certain point, but leaves you, but takes you away from other things. And you have gatekeeper after gatekeeper after gatekeeper after gatekeeper, like all these layers of an onion creating your reality, and you never know where it stops. It never stops.
And that goes back to the simulation point too. Like, you know, if I'm playing me in first person, and this is the limit of what I can see, right? So nothing around me it actually exists until I turn and face this way. Now the tree, all the pixels come together, they make the tree, they make the rock, they make the whatever needs to be. But while I'm not looking that way, there's no reason for it to exist. So we have this sort of blinkered view. And like you're saying, so if I'm looking at my reality, and you've convinced me that no, this is, or to at least look at this, it's not like I'm doing this, I'm just doing this. So our operational capabilities, I think with it, there is a scope. There might be a little bit of variance in that scope, but peripheral or 360, which is what you need to see to put all the pieces together, is a physical limitation of either the program or just the vehicle, the computer that we're playing the game on. But there's a limit. Why there is that limit, I don't know. And when it gets back to discussing with people, they go away, okay, I go this far, but not this far. It comes back again to the simulation with NPCs. How many people you deal with every day? Are they just simply with gatekeeper, another NPC? How many people do we interact with every day who are actually just NPCs if we're in a simulation? If we can go there for a moment.
That's a weird concept, the whole thing with NPC. But then again, I mean, maybe we're all one, and an NPC is maybe someone who you on your own journey have not yet experienced. You know what I mean? Have you seen The Egg? This this short story which was animated by Kurzgesagt, one of the famous YouTube channels which do animations of science and stuff like that. And they have done The Egg, which is about this person who dies and then wakes up next to God. And who are you? Well, are you God? Yes, I'm God. And am I dead? Yes, you're dead. You just had this accident. And oh my God, what happened to my wife, children, and so on. And then yeah, they're fine. Your children will remember you. Your wife, your marriage was already over, but she feel guilty about you. That makes you feel better. And okay, so what's happening now? Well, you will start a new life. I would send you to in the past, and you will be this woman in China. I think, what? You would send me in the past, and I will be a different person. Does that mean that I have met myself? Yes, you have met yourself many times. And you have basically been everyone who ever existed, the good and the bad, and everything you ever did to another person, you did to yourself. I find this very interesting because if you think about the universe as this, it comes all from a dot and expanding and potentially going back into one, and everything is one. We are all one. Time only exists as a byproduct of the three-dimensional experience. Without time, three dimension wouldn't be possible. So then you go in the fifth dimension and look at time, and you have this worm of your life. Everywhere where you went to create this worm, and then you cut it open, and you're there in the moment where you are right now. And but then at the same time, if after your death, your consciousness is still part of the universe. What is the universe? The universe is everything. And then if you now part of everything, you always have been part of everything, then you also part of everyone, and all their experience at some point will merge with yours, which basically means that you will live their lives. I will be you and you will be me. We are just seeing each other from a different perspective right now, but so the NPC, maybe that's just your experience, that your path of becoming the one has not yet been walked. It's just this I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense. If there's time, then there's no time out of this experience, then this doesn't make much sense, this NPC thing, because everyone is everyone at the same time. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what I mean.
It's impossible with time. I mean, nothing will send you crazier faster than trying to get your head around time. Like time has its own personality, its own energy, and you know you can go deep into exploring something and keep your sanity. But when you start looking at time and glitches and all phenomena associated with time, you will go crazy. You will go crazy. You know, it's one area I've only been able to go so far looking into. I've had the cognition, like in the jungle for you. It's like, okay, stop, turn around, go back. This is, yeah, because you know, we still have to function in this system that we've got. Like I said, otherwise they come for you. Blue uniforms or white uniforms, someone's going to come for you if you go too far. Yeah.
Which will be yourself coming for you,
In that
according to this
angle,
theory.
yeah, of course, yeah. Or you submitting to yourself, if you even flip that as well. So did
But
authority come to you, or did you submit to authority?
if you believe that you were creating reality with your own mind, do you think that you can circumvent that? That you will always be in control somehow by just just being in your center, just trusting,
But
just
do we even
knowing,
know
just
enough for that? I mean, if I, at a really young age, I gave you a guitar and then I taught you that there are 6 musical notes, you could spend your entire lifetime devoting full-time efforts and alley to play that guitar. But if you only believe that there's only 6 notes to play with, you're very limited to what you can create. And even when we think we're being open-minded or we're expanding or we're looking alternatives to create a reality, we still only have the tool set that we've been given. You have to
from the
first,
constructed reality that already created you in the first place.
yeah, exactly.
Because personally, I think everything out there is, and I'm talking specifically about
What we
the big
perceive,
stuff,
yeah,
music, Hollywood, books, history, politics, all the big stuff that you talk about with other people because they entertain themselves with these concepts. That feels very, very, very constructed.
yes,
All of
absolutely.
it.
And that's
And
why,
if you and it makes your brain very constructed because
mhm,
that's all that you're dealing with.
yeah,
Besides your daily life, besides your social interactions, besides what Matt talked about, the stuff that you see. Because that's not the stuff you see, that's something that has been created from the outside, that's being brought to you.
yeah,
And then sure, you can watch a Harry Potter movie and you see it, but everything about it has been constructed
yeah.
from the very first moment to the last,
And that's
right?
why people have
It's
trouble creating their reality, because they're still trying to do. We're entrenched. We're trapped. This construct that we've been given. We still try to use those tools to do something outside of the construct. It's like no, and I've mentioned like if you look out the window and you see this ugly car park, and you think, you know, a playground would be much nicer there. You can go out there with a pick, a shovel, a bulldozer, and you can exert all of this time, all of this energy, changing that car park into a playground. But it require a lot less energy and be a lot easier. As before that car park became a car park, you said, let's make that a playground. So our most effective utilization of what's available to us as co-creators is to create what is not yet, rather than trying to change what is. Because what we see, I mean, you go and look outside the window, everything you see, from the moment that you see it, it is the past on this lineal journey
interesting
that we're
point.
going on. So
you also attract resistance when you try to want to change the car park. Because now you get out there and say, well, I have this idea of this fantastic playground. So you take your pickaxe and you start hacking into the car park, but they're actually people using the car park and they might be in disagreement with you. So they come after you now because you're now going into this reality, being there, all powerful. Yeah, your Aries power. I'm here. I'm with my pickaxe. I will change this into a playground. But now they're coming for you because you challenge their reality.
yeah,
But if you do it like you say, and you say, okay, I go maybe somewhere and create my ideas somewhere else, no one is being interested in you whatsoever. You're free. You can do whatever you want. The government makes up the rules. You don't care about them because you go the other direction and do something what you want. You're free. They
yeah,
don't care about you. They don't come for you. They don't have the means to come for you. They're not interested in coming for you as long as you're not standing there and say, I'm against the government, right? Very loud somewhere in the middle of Times Square. That's a different story because now you're challenging what's already being created. But there's
yeah,
always the other direction where you can go.
yeah. And where we probably
And
have
then
the
and
most power.
there's the ocean, seasteading. As you're talking, Flauwy, I'm just thinking seasteading. They're making them now. They're building them off the coast of Panama, oceanbuilders.com, if anyone's interested. I've mentioned it before. And that's where we say, all right, well, if you guys have the land, we'll take the oceans, and we'll go and build civilization out there. And if we get moved on from a particular spot of ocean, we can just go to a different spot of ocean. We don't like where we are or the rules for the city of the floating city that we're attached to, we can just detach and go elsewhere.
Right, but you do it silently. You just do it. You don't make up these big plans. Say, oh, come on, join me. We will create this massive floating city. We will be our own government. We will be a new country. We will be outside of all these laws and we make videos about it and websites. Then they come for you. But no one cares about you if you just do it and you're out there someone, maybe with your community. It doesn't you don't have to do it alone, but do it silently. Just do it. Yeah, no one cares.
Yeah. So when something changes legally or lawfully, it's always like who's with this, who's not with this, and there's that constant division as well. So at any given point of time, there's 100 perspectives on what is real, and that can go in 100 different directions. But if you can control the direction of 90% of that energy, and is that what you're doing when you're going out by yourself? Because you're giving all your energy into that. So you haven't got this anchor behind you of energy that you're giving to the other system. You're actually saying, I'm doing it silently, doing it quietly, and off you go. But you're actually now using all of your energy because you're not giving them any of it.
It's very much Splinterlands to actually take the bridge over in our last minutes here to the game. I mean, you see how all these voices are like fighting. We have to do this, we have to do that. And just recently, I mean, it felt pretty depressing watching what's going on Discord, and everyone is like super salty and stuff is not as valuable as it should be according to everyone. And well, it's just because we didn't do this. No, we didn't do that, and we should do that. And the recent change that was bad because we didn't do that. Just what I like about Splinterlands is there's so many things you can do, and even if you don't like what's happening right now, you can just still do your little thing. You just don't ask about it. You just don't. I'm also not a big SPS holder. Like the governance thing, that's all cool, but you, I don't have to. I have my land. I'm happy about my land. I have my cards. And I do stuff with it. I don't ask anyone. I don't go out there doing the politics and now I have to lobby and whatever. You guys will figure it out. Meanwhile, I'm farming my secret points or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. So it's you don't have to be a part of the the collective that's going in the wrong direction. There are ways to operate outside of it.
I don't even believe that the collective is going in the wrong direction. It's going in a direction. That's all
So
part of it.
I was talking about
So
the salty collective.
yeah, it's part
Collection
of
of
it,
salt.
and we have to. You can take that and project it on the outside world as well. It's pretty salty out there in the outside world right now. It's pretty salty. And if you have read a lot of conspiracies, it's like, oh, I have read about this 10 years ago. It's all coming to fruition. But
Yeah.
I mean, I feel quite nice here right now at this point. And I have the feeling that you can always have this. You don't have to, if as long as you don't participate in all the drama. I mean, if worse comes to worse, you just grab your bag and then go out there and experience some nature for a while or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't have to participate in it. And then, but you're still there. It's still your reality. You're still the co-creator of this weirdness. Even though
Yeah.
there's saltiness out there, you just give it a little bit sugar.
Or cook food that needs salt.
Yeah, exactly. Salty food is great. Love salty food. More
Yes.
than sweet food.
Our bodies, 70% salt. Like even as a kid, I can never understand why is salt bad for me when my body is made up of like 70% salt water. But then later on you learn, well, same with growing up with instant coffee. Like later on you realize, oh, this bottle of Saxa toxic stuff isn't actually salt. And I like the Himalayan pink rock salt, and you can actually like if you get it usually comes in a grinder type thing. Grind some into your hand, and you can lick it, and it actually tastes nice. You get that little bottle of Saxa table salt, as they call it. Put some of that on your hand and give it a lick. It burns your tongue. It's like it tastes disgusting. So, yeah, I wonder how many people have actually tried salt as opposed to what's being sold in your supermarket as table salt. Okay, another definition of something, of the same thing. Salt. Someone says the word salt, we automatically assume what they're talking about. And right back at the beginning of the show, when you're talking about the Egyptian pantheon and the Egyptian movements, like even in hieroglyphs, we've deciphered their language from a tablet on taxation type thing. But you think like just the way that we use emojis now in text message, right? And if I send you a message and it's like says go to hell, or I send you a message that says go to hell smiley face, changes the whole instant message. And we're dealing with a pictographic language. How can we be so ignorant to think that we understand it on all of its levels? And so, like before, when you talk things like Isis, Osiris, even these names, because like in Sanskrit, words were chosen for their sounds, like not in English because of some meaning or something. That something was named for a sound that resonated with what that was, and then the word was created to represent that sound. So then we go to other forms of language, simply the name. Like if you say Isis or Osiris, that's what you'll read in most books, but that's the Greek names. Like Isis was Orset, Osiris was Asar, different sounds totally. And when it comes to word association, when some 19th century British aristocratic anthropologist says, oh, Isis, Osiris, this is a god, this is a goddess, the moment you hear god, goddess, immediately all of your hard drive analytics kicks in and you've got an image in your head of what a god or a goddess is. But they never actually referred to them as gods or goddesses. They were the Neteru, or Neta singular, Neteru plural. And when you understand what they were, they're more like Jungian archetypes than gods or goddesses. But back in 19th century, and anthropologists say, oh, this is their gods. This is like, as soon as you hear the word God or goddess, boom, this picture's in your head. It's like all of these doors close in on your possibilities. But okay, what were they? What is an archetype? What is if you read stories about someone, you start to think in a certain way. And that's the whole concept behind the transfiguration of the Christ, is the more you understand the stories, the more you know about him, the more you become like him. So it's a transfiguration. You start thinking the way that someone used to think. You want to be successful in business, you get a mentor, you learn their habits, you learn to think the way they do. So it's the same thing, but all of this happens every second of every day. We're thinking something, and most of the time we're unconscious of what we're thinking. And what are we doing with that? What are we actually building that we're not conscious of 90% of the time?
Yeah, and when these topics leave one speechless, at the same time, you can talk about them forever.
Yeah.
Now our time is running out.
Time. There she is. Yeah. So, behind the avatar. Now you know when Flauwy pops up on your screen, and you're gonna go, Flauwy, because you've seen Flauwy 100 times, you've heard of him in Discord, you've been in projects, you've heard of him. Instead of going, Flauwy, you're gonna go, oh, Flauwy. You've met the man on the other side of the keyboard behind that avatar that you look at and have an automatic assumption about. Join us next week for 120. Flauwy, thanks for coming on. Been great. Made it on for the second half, Matt. This has just been a dive down a rabbit hole. Glad that you became part of it. Yeah.
For sure. Thanks everyone for watching.
See you next week on 120. Boba Fett. Peace out.